Tom, this is supposed to be what, like the NHL draft day for healthcare deal making? Is that the idea?
That's the idea. I mean, in years past, it has been a mammoth deal making and announcement venue. And the streets of San Francisco are alive with people in blue blazers walking around doing deals on corners on cell phones. This week was a little bit different. Certainly, it does feel like healthcare has turned a corner. There's a lot of, kind of consensus that the healthcare system is broken. But between government movements, technological disruption of AI, it seems like there's a real opportunity and a sense of potential in the air.
Hmm. Were there any big deals announced that really caught your attention?
No, there was probably less deals this year than in past, and maybe it's more a feeling of we're here to actually make things change and make things different. Maybe the biggest deal that was announced was the Lilly Nvidia deal, and I
Right.
think that's a mammoth deal, and of course that sort of points you back to the idea that AI is going to be this incredible force in healthcare. Certainly in drug discovery, and I think Josh can talk to you about that. But maybe in our world, we think a lot about algorithmic care and how we have this shortage of clinicians in the primary care space to be able to deliver anything looking like preventative care. I think people are starting to warm to the idea that AI could be a big disruption and a big enabler of something that we call algorithmic care, which is not, hey, we're going to give you open heart surgery, or we're going to be your specialist clinician, although there will be lots of utilization of AI in that space. But really, in the area of preventative care, where a primary care physician traditionally helps you guide your health journey, I think AI has a huge role to play there.
So, Josh, I want to come to you because the discussion around AI and pharmaceuticals is one we've talked a little bit on the show. But what surprised you from this week at the conference in terms of that conversation and how the conversation was different compared to 1 year ago?
Well, first of all, I think if we just go back 1 year ago and compare just the state of the field, where the research was in AI drug discovery in JPM 2025 versus 2026 was completely night and day. If we look back a year ago, we had some, exciting breakthroughs on the protein folding front, which is, a useful tool in drug discovery. But in the past year, we went from being able to design these simple proteins to being able to design simple antibody drugs and now full length antibody drugs with drug friendly properties. So the research has really taken a big step change over the past year. And I think many are looking to 2026 as this year of AI deployment in pharma. I think it was quite striking actually to see just the number of high level pharma execs that were just spending most of their time at this conference in AI. Like Tom said, this is usually a conference where you see a lot of like M&A deals, people looking at asset licensing deals or acquiring companies. But the talk of the town was actually the future of how AI is really going to be disrupting the way that we're discovering things this year. So there's tremendous optimism in the air, and it was a pretty exciting week.
So it's almost like it may be for the moment, at least for maybe a year or two here in the middle, where it used to be a deal making exercise. I mean, it was a little more focused on like the seminars and the learning and like people actually trying to figure out how the heck are we going to use this stuff in our own businesses.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of questions about that, right? How are we adopting this? Who are the right people and companies to be working with? Tom mentioned the Lilly deal. We actually also announced a deal with Lilly where we're deploying our models and across the portfolio. So you had a lot of this talk about how, AI, especially even on the software front, is going to change the way that things are done. So yeah, a lot of education happening. I think a lot of folks under pressure to figure out how are we going to move quickly here? Because in AI, the early bird can really get the worm when you've got, massive phase changes like this. There's a lot of opportunity that opens up. So lots of discussion around, what should we be doing?
Tom, how much discussion? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, no, I was just going to pile on and say I think what's interesting about the sort of sense of potential here is everyone can agree that the healthcare system has lots of problems and challenges. That is not up for debate. But the sense of potential is really that like AI has the potential to go beyond like kind of a pilot concept and really understanding how AI gets deployed in practice. It's already being used in practice. I'm talking more about maybe care and Josh is talking about drug discovery and of course there's all sorts of deployment around how do we help people with prior authorizations, how do we automate some of the back office stuff, how do we make healthcare more efficient. I think between care, drug discovery, and efficiency, there's all this opportunity. And when I think about prevention, I think about changing the math of chronic disease. In the US, the 90% of all healthcare spending goes to people with chronic, and mental health conditions. And those costs are driven by complications, hospitalizations, and emergency care. And the thing is, if we can bend the curve on that cost, We spend roughly $1 out of $5 in our GDP on healthcare. And if you can move even 1% of that using AI across all those three dimensions I just discussed, you can free that up for lots more productive purposes. And by the way, the US is the outlier. Outside of the United States, countries are spending more like 10% or 9% of their GDP on healthcare. We have that opportunity. We can change the behaviors. And I think things like wearables and AI are going to be part of that change in human behavior that will yield to bend the curve, both on health outcomes, but also on health costs.
Tom, how much discussion was there around the new FDA regulations that came out around wearables?
Well, a lot actually. I think for us, obviously, I'm CEO of a wearables company, so we're going to have a lot of conversations when the FDA sort of
What
announces
was
something.
I mean, you're happy about this? You're it's it
I
really
think it's
unleashes you
good
for more
news.
innovation.
The FDA basically announced new guidance for wellness devices, drawing on kind of the guidance between a medical device and a wellness device. And basically, they said, listen, if you are accurate and you are a reliable wearable, we want to give you more leeway to explore innovation. We don't want to burden you with the same kind of constraints that you might sort of say, listen. A wearable like the Oura Ring, it's not the same as a pacemaker you put in your body. That pacemaker, if it doesn't work, it's going to kill you. Or a rank, probably not going to kill you. And that kind of span, I think, is really, really important for us to recognize that if we can open up wearables, I think we can change behaviors. And behaviors is what will bend the health curve and the cost
Right.
curve over time. Our belief is that we can do that, and do that not just around kind of helping change people's behaviors, but also around predicting disease outcomes and getting people into treatment sooner. And the sooner you intervene, the lower the cost. That is the key. And I think this guidance that came from the FDA, it actually was announced at CES the week before, but everybody coming into JPM was talking about it, is this idea that we can really push towards allowing wearable devices to innovate. And I think our view on this is that they can become something like a digital health screener. They become something that give you an early warning sign on health and get you into treatment sooner.
Josh, I want to come back to you and talk a little bit more about the AI and pharma intersection here. Speaking of deals, one of the questions I've had is to what extent we have seen pharma companies acquire their way into the space by buying companies that are developing the leading models in this space. Was that a conversation that came up in terms of pharmaceuticals companies saying, "Hey, well, we need the talent," and just like we've seen bigger tech companies buy their way into the space. I mean, is that something you foresee happening, buying the leading labs, I guess, for pharmaceutical models?
So I think this is actually where the conversation even changed this year as well. The traditional way that companies like Chai partner with pharma looks a little bit more like a consulting model. Like, let's take 2 or 3 drug programs, let's work on that together. And maybe if you like it, you'll try to buy the company to bring in those AI designed drugs. But I think what was really different this time around is now that the technology has really started working, I think many companies really want to be able to deploy these technologies themselves. And you have companies like Chai that are now offering that ability to now bring these kinds of software models and then deploy it within those companies. This wouldn't have made sense a year ago because you would have to do so much downstream lab work on top of the models to get anything to work. You really needed to have, a very tight integration between some proprietary lab setup together with your AI. But now that the models have gotten so good, there's actually now a way to deploy these models more broadly. So I think pharma is finally realizing that we've reached that inflection point, and they should be adopting these things beyond, those 2 or 3 kind of programs where you might ordinarily see adoption. And I think that actually means that you'll have new kinds of businesses that emerge. Like, we're building a computer-aided design suite for molecules, and that's something that is a lot larger than just 2 or 3 projects at a time. So I think that has been there's been a big waking up to that opportunity now within pharma, when I think people weren't really open-minded to that even just a year ago.
Right. Well, I want to thank you both for coming on. It sounds like it was a great week in San Francisco, and look forward to hearing more about how these deals eventually come together. That is Tom Hale, the CEO of Aura, and Joshua Meier, the co-founder of Chai Discovery, here on TITV.